less about the crime. No one looks behind the curtain, and no one questions why. The only time we got is right about now. I cross my heart, I take the vow, I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. Tonight's the test, tonight's the time. I am the punishment that fits the crime. I'll break the bricks, I'll pick the locks. I don't got nothing, but I'll give what I got. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end.
That guy. Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're with you now. We're with you to the end. And we always hope the end is a long, long way off. Very long, long way off. But sometimes we wonder because the captain of a few of the ships just doesn't seem to be all that consistent. And I'm not talking about the guy who was on the Costa Concordia either. I'm talking about the pilots of the world global economy, the world militaries, and those kind of guys. I think they're a little bit off base. We did a little joke last week just to lighten things up by showing you the propaganda operation of mind control through comedians, specifically Jeff Dunham and his Ahmed the dead terrorist. And don't forget to spell your with the real so everybody knows that. You know, you got to get that deep guttural sound. You'll probably be doing a lot of when you get the bird flu or whatever they have planned for us down the road. But they give their hand away for those who have eyes to see, because Ahmed the dead terrorist and the global elite, personified perhaps with Henry Kissinger, they all have the same philosophy. I kill you! Right? One guy does it with, allegedly, with the stereotype, you put the pack of explosives on your body and you walk into a crowded place and blow yourself up. And then nobody ever knows you came from the mind control school at Guantanamo Bay that's just kind of off in the back where nobody knows until psychiatrists blow each other away at Fort Hood and such like that. But that's a whole nother story. If you'd use a fighter plane or a bomber that's paid for by a sovereign nation and you paint a little flag on it and you come in low out of the rising sun and drop your ordnance on a schoolyard and kill all the kids, nothing wrong with that. Or is there? Yes, there's probably a lot wrong with that, but those guys write their own tickets and they bail themselves out. They don't even think they've committed a crime. And that's the sad part of it, because God made commandments. And in those commandments, in the fine print, doesn't say a whole lot about the leaders and sovereign nations and stuff like that being exempt. They're not exempt. And what they do is create like a joint collective sin debt to take us all down the river, which may be where we're heading very quickly. They use that old law, might makes right. The law of the jungle. That's the ultimate law of this planet. And one law that needs to be tinkered with just a little bit to make it a little better. But they load the deck. One that was just, sort of getting a gas now is we're really loading the deck at Parliament. See, in the old days, we used to load them up with hockey players. So then we'd have a better team in case we ever had to play anybody else. You get all these retired NHL guys, and they'd be made senators and such like that. We got the best goalie. He was with the Montreal Canadiens. We got the best this. Now they're getting a lot of former chiefs of police and police commissioners. So Julian Fantino got the nod to run for the Conservative Party, to go totally against the grain of everything he ever said in his whole life, especially about things like civilian ownership of firearms, like going right back to when he was in diapers. Him and El Duce would probably go around the piazza going, gun control, in Italian, of course. And then all of a sudden he has to ride a different horse because they're all prostitutes. So what does our El Duce leader, Stephen Harper, do? Well, he gives a senatorship to former chief of police for Ottawa, Vern Smith. And then it reminded me a little bit of a funny story when I was talking about that with Agent 99 about, back in the old days before we had regional governments and all that, when you had the little small town police departments, decent people, your friends and neighbors. There was a story from the old town of Port Credit, which is of course right next to the Credit River. We're in the wintertime where we take up our Canadian sport, like tonight, hockey and skating and such like that. We wait for the river to freeze and get a breakaway and be in Buffalo or something like that. So it was a great old day. So what one of the old-timer constables used to do down there is he'd drive his police car across the river to make sure the ice was solid. And then the chief would look at him and go, what would ever happen if the ice wasn't solid? And then a light comes on in his head. And he goes, well, I guess it wouldn't live long enough to be a senator, but the car's probably going to go through the ice. Right. So what the chief did is assign that little duty to the fire chief, and hopefully he didn't go across with a fire truck because that really ruins the odds. So then we go to Ottawa, we have the same situation. We got a river, the Rideau Canal. Everybody skates on the Rideau Canal in the wintertime. So a long time ago, Chief Smith probably had to test the ice too. And he'd send one of his men across, and he'd drive his car across the river to the other side. And then the chief would take him aside, give him a good tongue lashing and say, are you stupid? Don't you know on the other side they speak French? And that's how you get to be a senator. Just like that. No thoughts, no brains, no intelligence, no nothing, just a good yes man. And why is he getting that job? Well, it's obvious. That's where they had, right, the Bilderberg Summit just a few years back, right? Chief Smith had to give cover fire for all the former Nazis who are traitors subverting our country and taking it over. So what better guy to have as a senator than one who's already been smoking bone for the New World Order for many long years? So that way, when Stephen Harper gives him, some papers about taking away all our rights and freedoms and shredding the Constitution in both official languages, he's going to go, yes, I'll do it. I get a pension. I get 2 pensions, actually, because I used to be the chief of police. And they can have all that dirty, filthy lucre and work for Satan and pretend to be, reasonable, just people. Quite nice, isn't it? Great setup. So we put on a website, Conspiracy Cafe, Conspiracy-Cafe. Don't forget that dash. It's like Morse code, dash, dot, 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 dot. Got to have the dash. And when it hits the fan, you're going to really learn how to dash. So we put on, for Conspiracy Night at the Movies, a little documentary movie called The U.S. versus John Lennon. Classic to go through history. See what it was like, more than likely for a lot of you before you were born. About the riots in the 60s, all the dirt that went on. They just vaguely touch on the really deep, dark stuff. That's what I get into, and that's what makes this very, very different. That's why you got to come to that channel. There's no other place that's going to tell you like this anymore. None. Because I know a little bit about my history, and I know the conspiracy history of the world, and I know the intelligence history of the world, and just regular history, Joe Sixpack history. And when you put them all together, you get very close to the truth. So one of the things we posted on the website was Imagine, the truth behind the conspiracy. And of course, Imagine is a song written by that guy the U.S. went after, John Lennon, because John Lennon was in a very unique position, along with a very small handful of other people in the world. He's someone who could change the paradigm just by saying it. And in the documentary, you see where, some guy got put away for ever for having marijuana or something like that, and John Lennon wrote a song. And he sang the song at a concert. And the Supreme Court, within days, reversed their decision about keeping this guy in jail. And they let him out. Now you tell me, what other living, breathing human being is going to do that? Very few. And the few that are on that handful would probably be dead now too. You might have Princess Diana, maybe Marilyn Monroe, if she really got active politically in her day. She could have that much oomph to take things that far. Elvis Presley. Maybe that's why some of them are dead too. But John Lennon, in our lifetime anyway, outside of the political spectrum, specifically was one of those kind. Dr. Martin Luther King, perhaps, the Kennedy brothers. Very short list of people who are in the public eye who could actually shut the New World Order down and bring it to its knees. So in the documentary, which was good because it tweaked my memory about things I've done years ago that are falling off the radar screen, and we have new audiences and new people, and they should learn this history, especially if you're into homeschooling or something like that, to learn the real history of what really happened in your nation, the real evil, the real degenerates that somehow get to be president of the United States and their apparatus. It's very, very important. So they mentioned in the documentary that John Lennon didn't go to the 1972 Republican National Convention. Of course, they don't tell you why, because they probably don't even know themselves. But he just flat out, I ain't going, because he knew it was a trap. A big trap. What they were doing, what they were waiting for, was him to come. Then they were going to have terrorists. Ooh, where did we hear that word lately? That's like a buzzword nowadays. Almost as good as drill. They had terrorists that were going to blow up bombs at the convention. And John was already in cahoots with what were called black terrorists. People in like the Black Panther movement or something like that from way back in the day. So you lure him in because he's got all this clout to sway the masses. Suck him in really good. Make sure that he's well affiliated with all these so-called crazy nutbar violent people, and then you blow something up. And then you can just stand back and say, there he is, Osama bin Laden. And they were prepared. They were prepared to declare martial law. They were prepared to forego the election. And I'm hearing two stories now, so I posted one on the blog with Imagine the Truth Behind the Conspiracy, and I also did a TV show that I wrote up that never got anywhere that tells the deep, dark parts of the truth, Che TV. I should put up the other couple of episodes I did too, because they tell you some of these deep, dark secrets. So in the name, Lewis Tackwood, the names are not changed to protect the innocent, by the way, in this TV series. There's imaginary characters who work at this camp. It's like a rendition camp. But it's not like we torture you or anything. We just discuss famous people in an interrogation style and drill down to the truth with some left-wing type of people who might seem somehow similar to Che Guevara and his band. People who just seem to live forever because history lives forever. What happened 1,000 years ago is still important today, even though you weren't there. But the energy that was created by various movements, especially big movements like wars, and the big civil war in England that put the king's head in the basket and brought out things like the Magna Carta, etc., 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 that led to constitutional government, voting, and such like that. Those things that happened long before you were born still affect you to this day. On the lighter side, we're just kind of joking around a little bit, but when the man sealed the tomb for Pharaoh, put that final stone in place, that's it, you're going to paradise forever with all your stuff. What do you think he said? Take that, you asshole, and your copyright. Because we don't need you anymore. We seal you up in this big tomb, and you take all the stuff you patented, and you stay in there with it, and we'll just go back to living like normal, decent people. That could happen. So if we can show the screen, we'll just show this picture that was in the documentary that I froze and put up. I really like this because it's just timeless. This is John Lennon and Yoko Ono standing, looking at the World Trade Center, which was going to be the next. You go from Osama bin Laden to Osama bin Laden, and we just see it in the final stages of construction. And you just look at this history. The history of what was past, the history of what is, and the history of what's going to be in the future. It's just absolutely amazing. And of course, we get into the convention, 1972, Tricky Dicky, and we can say that because now the British press are reporting things the American press can't report. He's gay! He was always gay! And so was J. Edgar. And this is the man who broke the mold here. Now, he should be a household name in every household because he did probably more to save America than every soldier in Afghanistan and Iraq put together. His name is Lewis Tackwood. and this is a book, $50 for the 3 copies that are on Amazon for one of those paperback versions. The Glasshouse tapes, far more important than the Watergate tapes, because he talks about all the plotting and conspiracies that went on between the CIA and the LAPD to bomb the convention. And in some reports, they even suggest kill the president. So it was in the newspaper in its day. No way out for Louis Tackwood, just so that we can show you we're not pulling this out of our hat. Some of the allegations that go in here: 9 Israelis on Olympic team killed, right? The Munich massacre, that's the thing that changed the whole like they talk about 9/11 changing things. Like the Olympics before that was just a track meet. You just show up with your 6-pack and enjoy it. And now you got to go through like a security apparatus, like you're bringing in invaders from another planet. And you just want to make sure they don't have any ray guns. So when you get into the fine details here about this intelligence committee that was set up, we see Congressman Larry McDonald's name coming up, being the guy who was getting all the information the LAPD was ordered to destroy in their intelligence operation. And I always marveled at these guys, the terrorists, like they got, you know, your brand new, looks like Beretta machine guns. You know, where do they sell them? At Max Milk or something like that? The 7-Eleven, the Quickie Mart? Then of course Larry McDonald gets his reward. He's shot down by the Russians, they say, perhaps. But this adds such a whole new spectrum to this story. The intelligence history, what really went down. And when you read Mae Brussels' works, she was like the most prolific author of the 60s and 70s to do this. She's gone now. Now it's our turn. We have to pick up the torch and carry on and write and talk and speak about things. Because this is what these people have done. You go through that piece and you look about what your government has really done. There are no terrorists. It's all make-believe. Pretty much everything they do is make-believe. They're all liars. They're all frauds. Even Ronald Reagan had, you know, the log cabin Republicans showing up late at night and such like that, so it is understood. And then I came across a little blog that I posted as well, Freedom Demands Action. It came with a nice picture of the Statue of Liberty and all kinds of guys in the old days when they built some country called America, and it probably came from a little bit about like breaking the law and stuff, because you were a British colony and fighting against the crown was like treason. You know, you swing from a rope for doing that, and they can beat you up and kick you a little bit too. Comes with a little quote from George Washington. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force, like fire, a troublesome servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action. George Washington. He was the guy that probably got me in a little trouble when I brought that up on the Power Hour the last time too, because, you know, George Washington had a policy, right? It was hang the traitors. Doesn't matter how cute and cuddly they are, you got to hang them because they're a cancer, they're a threat to the republic. And even though it pains you, and sometimes they're your friends and sometimes they're close to you, you just got to do it for the benefit of the rest of we the people. But then it never dawns on me sometimes when you're in somebody's house and you say something like that, and maybe they're working under the table really doing that kind of stuff, and they don't really like it that you say you should hang them. So they get a little mad at you or something, you know, behind the scenes or after you're out the door or something, and just go, you know, that bugger, he wants to hang us all. Quoting that George Washington guy. So in this blog, which I think is just, you know, the founding fathers couldn't write something as well. And when I read this, they were talking about the health bill, but it could apply to any bill whatsoever, including the one that Wikipedia was protesting over, the NDAA, etc., etc., etc. There are no words I can use to adequately describe my horror at the vote which transpired last night. It was a vote which flew in the face of the expressed will of the people and threw aside the very principles of democracy. That vote was nothing less than a declaration of war on the freedom of the American people and the Constitution which guarantees and protects that freedom. Pick one. Pick a bill, Senate, Congress, pick one. Everything they've done in the last few years you could answer with that phrase. So then he goes on, as the voters of the United States ponder what to say, it would profit us to think long and hard about the freedom Democrats are trying to take from us tonight and what freedom demands. Yes, it makes demands. Freedom is not a gift. It's not like trickle-down economics. It is not given to you by the government in a precise dosage that can be adjusted to match a politician's diagnosis of what ails the body politic. Your forefathers won an impossible revolution against an invincible foe to declare the self-evident truth that your rights descend from your Creator. Whether that Creator is a transcendent God or a random combination of genetic material in the primordial soup, gotta love a guy who's got a sense of humor just to give it to them a little bit. It is a power that existed before the first king assumed his throne or the first president was elected. Liberty burns in your imagination, flows through your veins, and rings through your words. The radiant idea has burned through all the bloody clouds of the last 3 centuries. You are not clay to be sculpted by the will of another. You are not a racially inferior inconvenience to be marched into a concentration camp. You aren't a class enemy to be exiled by dictators. You are not a dispensable cog in the machinery of collectivist economics or a mouth to be starved by the failure of collective agriculture. You are an American. And through a dereliction of their duty as elected representatives, the Democrats and the Republicans, a lot of them voted for a lot of this stuff too, right, have forced you to choose whether you will retain the full measure of the honor and dignity of your Constitution. Freedom demands action. Our nation hangs by a thread. Let's get to work. And get to work you better get, because pretty soon you're going to have to do like those guys going across the river with Washington and fight it out. So that's one of the things with this protest that Wikipedia is doing and this Copyright Act they're putting through and all this sort of thing, is you're infecting the body politics. We no longer have freedom of speech. And the reason the aristocracy allowed us to have the freedom of speech is very, very simple. Because after the French Revolution, you were hanging from a pole! And they killed you. You see, because if you can't talk it out, you have to fight it out. And there's still more of us than there is of them. Pays to look at your history sometimes, Mr. Globalist. Because Ahmed could end up being some guy named MacDonald. And if you push him around long enough and hard enough, he may end up with saying the same thing. I kill you! So that's why we have free speech. It's the easiest way. You lay your cards on the table. I lay my cards on the table. You got your opinions. I got my opinions. People listen, they watch, they study, they analyze, they make up their own minds, and we drive the boat in a certain direction. Unfortunately, we're not the slightest bit interested in your opinions because we're the government. So Montana had a good idea. They're getting together to do their recall. They're allowed to do a recall, and they're recalling their 2 senators, Max Baucus and Jonathan Tester. And in the old days, parliamentary democracy demanded that you run people like that out of town on a rail and tar and feather them and stuff like that. Tradition should fall hard. Give them an idea. Let everybody in Washington see what happens to traitors as they're hanging from the light poles, tarred and feathered. We're being nice. We didn't put the rope around your neck, we just tied you to the light pole, a little tar and some feathers. And even the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Chickens said it was okay to use the feathers. So we had it from both sides. But see, these guys are smart, and girls too. They're evil, but they're smart. Because for them, all this stuff is like taking candy from a baby. But we did hear some good news. The ratings for American Idol are down, 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 down. Isn't that a good thing? Maybe somebody's waking up and smelling the coffee. So they came up with this other bill known as the Enemy Expatriation Act, which allows the American government to strip American citizens of their citizenship without a trial. See? We took that piece out of the NDAA And then we bring in this part. So that way, we have something even worse than what was in the NDAA in the first place. So once we strip you of your citizenship, you're an enemy combatant. And then you got this twit, Mitt the Twit Romney. How you fall for it, I don't know. Like, I swear. You know, like even when America separated in 1776, you still spoke the King's English. So when I read stuff, you know, up here on my side, and we call it the Queen's English now, I thought we were speaking and reading the same language. So Mitt the Twit says, and there's a big controversy about taking the vote away from criminals, felons. So where in the Constitution does it say that you can shave off little sections of people and they have no rights? The right to vote is God-given. Okay, you're in jail. So what? Who cares? But you fall for it every time. Sucker punch! Gotcha! Because who do you think's going to be the next criminal? The patriots. The people who believe in that archaic old document. Anyone who believes in the Christian Bible and the Constitution of the United States and the Second Amendment or the flag by which it stands is guilty of an offense. There's no trial. Your citizenship is stripped en masse. If you're not licking my boots like a dog, you're not a citizen. And you can't vote. And you begged them for it because you fell into the paradigm to say, oh, don't let prisoners vote. It's not for prisoners, it's for you. Everything they do is ultimately for you. The rope they put around your neck. And who's the guy who really likes this? This is from the Wikipedia article. Our good old buddy and pedophile in chief, possibly the man who kills little girls and throws their bodies from his private yacht, the great grand master of espionage and tapping people's phones, Chairman of News Corporation, Rupert Murdoch. He thinks it's a grand old idea. So we have on the website, leaked memo says Apple provides backdoor to governments. Well, they've been providing backdoors for a long time, helps them sneak around, but this just, from the Indian military intelligence, just lays it on the line that we got a backdoor. We can read everything you say, look at everything you do. And it's like I've said many, many times before. You're watching TV, don't think for a minute they ain't watching you, because nowadays everything's got a camera inside looking back at you. See, I got a camera here, but this is one we put here, so I know it's there. It's the one you can't see, even though they'll even tell you about it. And you'll take it and eat it with a spoon. And then Dr. Carly, from Micro 1650 AM, the same one my buddy Timmy's working on, sent me this one too about, it's a satire article, but everything's in there. The new video game that teaches genocide to your youth. They call it Depopulous, where players assume the role of the secret planetary leader, and I think we got one. Players start with a technically advanced but overpopulated world and have to get rid of 90% of the population. I heard that at the Gorbachev Foundation one, was that 95, 96? Max Keen. All without raising alarm bells. Ooh, see, they're afraid of those alarm bells, so that's why you come here. Wish we had a bell and a hammer. Bong, 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 bong. As the British used to say in the war, action stations, action stations. Won't even need a big one, little 3-inch 50. Drop a few rounds here or there, that'll wake them up real fast. Remember, a buddy of mine was in the Navy, and a couple of the boys got in a little trouble, and it's one of those countries, you know, the Banana Republic kind or something, and they got a few of the sailors in jail, and imagine the guards are thumping them a little bit here or there, giving them a hard time, and the captain was nuts. Well, that's one thing about a good captain, even if you're nuts, you look after your men. So at 0600 Sunday morning, everybody's hung over and half asleep. Bong, 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 bong. The alarm bells are going off. Everybody's attending their battle stations. And yeah, we only had a 3-inch 50. We aim that puppy at the city hall, jail, fire department, police department, county seat. Start loading rounds. Boop, boop. And I guess this guy couldn't sing, so he couldn't write a song and have the court reverse their sentence to let the guy go like John Lennon. So it was that might makes right law. Didn't need much translation. It goes like this. Boom! Okay, let all those Anglo guys out of the jail, please, and order me some new underwear. These ones, they seem a bit soiled. Works every time. So the FBI is going to start their supermassive database here. New biometric database. Ooh. IAFIS. I guess we could make some fun out of that if we take some time. The Next Generation Identification, NGI. So that way they can have facial recognition, iris scans, a data sharing agreement between all the law enforcement agencies, something called SCOM, Secure Communities. Because everybody is going to have, even without the mark of the beast, the equivalent of the mark of the beast, because we'll have everything about you. So when you go for that like employment screening, they got something they call the rat back system. It should be rat back. So that way, once the employer hands in the forms and they clear you and give you a security check, they're supposed to be destroyed. But now they got a little secret thing, the rat back, where they'll keep them. That way, just in case you ever come under the attention of the Gestapo somewhere, we rat back to your employer and you lose your job. Because this is a free country, founded on democratic principles, the Republican form of government. I don't even know if the commies were that bad. Sometimes you hear about like villages of people in China actually overthrowing. I heard that on the news last week. Just stopped me in my tracks. Well, I thought I lived in a free country. So there's a corrupt local government, right? The people get pissed off. There's a little conflict. So technically they're breaking the law. Then they find out that the so-called municipal leaders were actually breaking the law and stealing from the public purse and enriching themselves and engorging themselves and yada, yada, yada. They were fired, put in jail. And the guy who led the protest was given the job of leading the town. Tell me that's going to happen in the United Snakes of America, or Canada, or any other part of the world. Hardly likely. But they do have plans for us, big plans. And it's like they said in that game, Depopulous. India's reporting the first case of killer TB, resistant to all available drugs. It's one of the big reasons why they're going after all the herbal products, because it gives you a fighting chance. They may work. Nobody got the 1918 flu that worked in the cinnamon factory. Hint, 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 hint. And a long time ago, they had some specialist on the Richard Serrett show when he was on CFRB, I think, way back then. And I got to ask her a question about that. She explained that in very long technical terms. But this powder was everywhere. Like, it's in your ears, it's up your nose. You know, it's just everywhere. Just like you work in construction, you got plaster dust everywhere. Nobody got sick. Something to remember. Marco Polo didn't walk to China because he was bored. These spices kill germs. One of my patented cures for the last time I had some kind of plague was you take a bun, half a bun, and the bread's white. And you take every kind of spicy concoction you can imagine until you got something like about a 1/4 inch thick. So you can't see the bun anymore. Black pepper, chili powder, curry, garlic. I mean a man's sandwich. Something that, you know, when you put that near a radiation detector, it starts going off. A burning ring of fire. And then, just to make it palatable to go down, I melted a little cheese on top. And what I had was doing the Tijuana two-step, just like, you know, in the old days in vaudeville, they put that big hook around your neck and pull you off the stage. Those germs are just, out! Let's get out! The man's crazy. Nobody could eat anything like that. So it works. Just made it up. Like, I had this bugger, it just wouldn't go away for nothing. Agent 99 was coming down something. They got this spray, it's called O24. It's an herbal painkiller, but it has some of the most effective essential oils that you can imagine. You can look that up on the internet. This, you know, little spray on the neck, and the germs are heading for the exits. So the turnaround time was just a matter of hours, where, you know, before you're in just terrible pain, all kinds of swelling, the infection's really getting rooted in all kinds of places that are hard to get at. And they're cocky little buggers, like they lick oregano oil and just look back at you and say, what are you going to do now? Keep fighting. Never give up. So we had a big surprise. We read it in the Google code. Actually, I have a new Google code to break too. One of our listeners sent me that. I don't have time to do justice to it. It's going to take a couple of days to fend this over. This is the Heaven Code. And it wasn't released where the white people live. It's in Asia. Well, Australia and New Zealand count. It's gone through Asia, India, and the other side of the world. Who's going to heaven and how, I don't know. But this was the one we did a while back, the Nicholas Steno Strata Scientist Code, and with the angle there. We were a little worried about that one because, you know, Earth changes are supposed to come, right? And it may not be too good for us. Well, guess what? Can we show the first video? Mysterious and unexplained noises are now being reported around the globe. All around the globe. Generally in the second week of January. Some of the films are older. But we'll do this one for about a minute. You can hear them yourself. The guys working as lumberjacks in Alberta. Like, man, you hear that in the forest? Like, yeah, should be the first one there about, I can't remember if it's Mexico or, I think that one's Mexico. There's one in Mexico, Costa Rica, and yeah, it should be the first one. Like, there's three, and the one that's at the top. Sure. There it is. Okay, we can cut that one and go to the second one now because they just repeat it. How would you like to, you know, hear that in your house, right? Like, whoa! That one was in Mexico City. Like, say, they were all over the world. Malaysia, Czechoslovakia, Chicago, but Alberta, Montreal. This one, this next one's in Costa Rica.
Que muchas personas dijeron haber escuchado durante la madrugada de hoy se convirtió en el tema más comentado de las últimas horas en las redes sociales.
Sonidos muy similares a este son los que cientos de personas aseguran haber escuchado pasada la medianoche de este lunes. Durante la mañana, Facebook y Twitter se convirtieron en los lugares donde muchos quisieron encontrar respuesta a la pregunta, ¿habré sido solo yo? Los reportes de lugares como Tibás, Guadalupe, Curridabat, Romoser e incluso Heredia hicieron suponer que se trataba del juego de pólvora del cierre de los festejos en Zapote. Sin embargo, también abundan los comentarios de quienes aseguran haber escuchado los mismos estruendos en Pérez Celedón, San Carlos y hasta en Guanacaste. Por su parte, la Cruz Roja y los bomberos confirmaron a nuestro corresponsal Wilber Hernández que no atendieron ningún incidente relacionado con explosiones durante la madrugada. Uno de los principales temores en redes sociales es que se tratara de algún evento sísmico. Sin embargo, el Opsicori lo descarta de momento.
Sísmicamente no tenemos nada, los instrumentos no registran ninguna señal que coincida con estos ruidos. Sin embargo, en lo personal sí yo escuché como como bombetas, como un juego pólvora. Ya si es de varios lugares del país, ya podríamos estar pensando en el ingreso de algún avión supersónico que rompa la barrera de la atmósfera y entonces genere ese tipo de ruidos.
Algunos a modo de broma y otros en serio comentaban
one's
en redes
happened
que se
before an
trataba de lo
earthquake,
advertido por los
you're gonna
mayas,
hear the-
incluso de señales del apocalipsis. Lo más curioso es que al
guess we get
parecer
our
este
main
fenómeno
prophecy
no es
there, there's
nuevo
no
y
doubt
no solo
about
se
that.
registra en Costa Rica. Este video que circula en YouTube fue grabado
So this is the one
supuestamente
before an
antes de un
earthquake in the
sismo en
United
Colorado,
States.
y en él se escuchan retumbos similares a los que se reportaron
Sounds like
anoche.
explosions. My advice to these guys is, as they pan back, you hear noises like that,
El programa
don't stand
español
near a
Cuarto
rock
Milenio
pile.
también habla sobre el tema. De acuerdo con los especialistas, al sonido se le conoce como el hum o zumbido, y a la fecha no hay una explicación clara de qué se trata.
And this one's in Kiev, as I remember.
Lo cierto es que a esta hora todavía muchos comentan los sonidos en las redes sociales. Trompetas, transformadores o algo más. Juzgue usted mismo.
Okay, we have a video on the website that goes into much greater detail, different places. But you have to really wonder, like we had that strata code. It was bang on. These were being reported the 11th and the 12th of January. And the strata code was up there in a timely manner to say that some terrible things could be expected to happen under the earth. They knew. We didn't find out exactly what they meant till a week later, but we know it's important, and we keep looking at it all the time. Some of those noises sound like a ship sinking as it's breaking up, the twisting of the metal. As bulkheads break and snap apart. The explosions, well, that type of noise, that's difficult to say. Or maybe they're making the earthquakes and they are setting off explosive charges and they were heard. It's a good thing everybody's got these cameras nowadays, but it's a very pertinent point that we can expect these things. We can expect mainstream media to deal with this or to even talk about it. We're on our own because we are the people. We're the government, not them. They just usurped power by prostituting various offices. We can do it on our own. We don't need them. We have detectives all over the world because they listen to this show and they send information in, things they hear. Used to have a show a long time ago called Charlie's Angels, and Mr. Forsyth, I said this on a show a long time ago, but his real birth name is Freund, just like mine. And I got my angels too. There are a lot of the people that participate in this, people who contribute money, and we thank you over and over and over again. We just remind you, though, quickly, be careful about U.S. postal money orders because we're not part of the United States yet up here in Canada, and we don't have a place to cash them. So we're lucky the last chap who sent one sent it blank, so I could send it back to the States with a retired Vietnam vet, and he's cashing it for me. So it still gets to good use. Another strange murder story. That's why you got to take the time to go through all the fine print. Can't let somebody else do your thinking for you. Just reeks. As soon as you see the title, you know right away. Murdered Oxford University professor had mental breakdown in the months before his death. Of course, murdered's in quotation marks. Professor Stephen Rawlings, 50, had withdrawn from academic life, suffering mental health problems since the summer of 2011. An eminent astrophysicist. He was found dead at his friend's home, Dr. Devinder Sivia. And they're trying to say it's a tragic accident, perhaps. Professor Rawlings played a part in the square kilometer array that looks back 13 billion years in time at the beginnings of the universe. He was at Oxford University, St. Peter's College, and then all of a sudden he just goes kind of weird. Because maybe they're doing mind control stuff on him, because this other doctor, Dr. Sivia, he works for NASA. And countries were fighting over him about who's going to get him. The Brits wanted him, the Australians wanted him, and the Americans wanted him. And then when you get into the fine print, so seemingly Dr. Rawlings goes a little bit nuts at Dr. Sivia's home, and he attacks Dr. Sivia and has a heart attack and collapses. They say he's suffering from that depression. They've known each other since 1981, went to school together, wrote books together. Described as like brothers. And then when you get to the back of the article, then you find out Dr. Sivia was a former colleague of Dr. David Kelly, the government weapons inspector found dead in the woods near his Southmore home. He worked with David Kelly and knew him well, maybe even well enough to understand exactly what he was doing and how. So is there a conspiracy where they do a little mind control on Dr. Rawlings? He looks weird, acts weird, and then he watches Ahmed the dead terrorist while his friend is making tea. Slowly he turns. Gets the knife out of the drawer. I kill you! Oh shit, has a heart attack and falls dead. They do a good job, these intelligence services. We do a good job too. We read between the lines. We know who's who and what's what. It just tells me they were out to whack this guy, and if I was him, I wouldn't be turning my back too often. Maybe it's a good time to get out of Dodge, actually, because the Brits whacked him in Britain. That's probably not a good place to be right now for you. Then there's like a big reason sometimes why we have to face this so-called apocalypse. No society has ever survived monkeying with God's creation. But we see some Americans are doing some monkeying with monkeys. So they're making a cocktail of cells from other embryos of different types of monkeys and putting them all together at the Oregon Primate Center. So they created these cute little monkeys, but unfortunately they're not God's creation, they're their creation, so they're called chimeric monkeys. And even the way they name them, you know exactly who these guys are working for. Roku and Hex, named after the fire-breathing creature in Greek mythology composed of parts of multiple animals. The names come from the Japanese and the Greek for 6. And they're created with the genetic material from 6 monkeys. So we got Roku 6, Hex 6, and 6 monkeys. I wonder where we ever came across that before. So they just shove it in your face and ask you to eat it. So this is going to be an article published in the journal Cell. They say the possibilities for science are endless. The lead scientist, Dr. Shukrat Metalopov, there's a mouthful, he's leading this so-called charge to make these abominations that God always says flush will just be another Atlantis that someone may postulate about for thousands of years, or maybe find a little dust somewhere to say it existed or didn't exist. So as we didn't get time to talk about, the Japanese princess reveals the 3 days of darkness, and we posted on the blog that you can read about the 3 days of darkness from a more biblical perspective, from Catholic tradition. Will we be facing the 3 days of darkness? Could very well be true. How are we going to handle it? What are we going to do? Read and find out. It's very important. One of the big things we do is take the train off the tracks and stop steaming in the wrong direction. And speaking of steaming in the wrong direction, of course, we had our captain of the Costa Concordia cruising in the wrong direction. And I can see it's just obvious. It's got all the hallmarks of an intelligence operation. Because the media is trying this guy in the media. They're releasing what would be court evidence, like right away, to try him in the newspapers. So everybody's seen pictures of the wreck. And right from the very beginning, I smelled a rat, a big rat. So this allegedly was the course the guy sailed. They kind of leave out this X, even though they show it in the map. This is where he struck the reef. And he was holed and he was damaged. So what do you do, right? Any captain worth his salt grounds his ship. so the people can get off, because the ship's going to sink. The last place you want to sink is out here. Try and find them, right? You're like a grain of sand on the beach. Especially if you can't launch the lifeboats. You know how many people would have died if he didn't take that ship into shore? But he was holed here. And then they leave out like little details, tiny little details that are sort of important, like the 2 power failures on the ship. Not just 1, but 2. The fact that all 6 of those big, beautiful Finnish engines, you can have a nice picture of them down here. Here we go. All stopped working at the same time. It's like something we make a joke about. I drive a shitbox. Doesn't have too many microchips in it. All the latest, greatest, and beautiful stuff, even something like this, is probably started somewhere with a microchip. And when it gets fried, it chokes. So right away, the only conclusion I can draw is it's an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And I even find in the British press, the Daily Mail, the editor of IHS Fairplay Solutions shipping magazine, Malcolm Latarche. He describes it as a phenomenon known as harmonic interference. This problem happened on the Queen Mary in September in 2010 when she was approaching Barcelona, but she was farther away out in a safe sea lane, and it didn't matter. She didn't hit anything. So you're taking your course the way he was taking his course, and all of a sudden you lose all your engines and you lose all your power. Well, that means like you can't steer anymore, right? So like when you're driving a car and you lose your power steering, oh, it's tough and hard. Imagine trying to turn something that weighs like several tons. Oh, Jesus, Arnold, get up here, man. Shit. It's kind of difficult. And then there's something called like the ocean, you know, and it just kind of pushes. Even like the boat's 122,000 tons or something like that. Yeah, just pick that up and park it in my driveway. Where do we get off? You're in the dark. Everything you use to steer is electronic because you're doing it by satellite. Okay, so what are we going to do? Let's go back in time. Let's get out the box. We get the sextant. We open up that nice cute little gizmo and look at the stars and start to measure them. And all of a sudden we start listing 30 degrees. Whoa! Hey, where'd he go? Where was the officer with the sextant? Oh, he fell overboard, sir. Oh, damn. I hate when that happens. All your gizmos are gone. You're back to the Stone Age. But we didn't have 122,000 ton ships in the Stone Age. You had maybe like a little one with guys pulling oars. Boom, 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 boom. So I didn't even hesitate to think it's electromagnetic pulse. You look at the classic signatures in this. Happened at 9:30. Inverted 666. Captain abandoned ship at 11:30. Classic 311 backwards. Or multiply them together, 33rd degrees of Freemasonry. Witnesses on the ship said their boyfriend, engineer officer, described the power failures. And then, maybe people don't know it, but there's a war on, right? Like Libya, we're getting ready for the Middle East. Naval ships are going all over the place. They got X-band radar and all other kind of goody stuff. Just ready to start, you know, popping all kinds of undesirables or something. So I find this little puppy here, as I say it's EMP, the CRS report for Congress. Congress? Who's that? High Power Microwave Devices Threat Assessments. So the high power microwave device does the same thing, electromagnetic pulse. So you can click on the link and read that. See, that's from like the FAS. If you don't know what they are, that's called the Federation of American Scientists. Those are the guys who didn't smoke dope at school too much. They took the maths and the sciences that maybe we bypassed for basket weaving or something and went to university to become physicists and mathematicians. So they write this report to talk about EMP. You talk to the average person in the street and they just go, They don't understand, but it's all there. And it's not like they didn't have an accident before. Back in the 90s, with the first Gulf War, there was some secret munitions loading going on. And an Italian ferry crashed into a tanker, so they say, near Camp Darby. Camp Darby is the place where they have like enough explosives to blow up half the world. This happened April 10th, 1991. There were reports of 5 U.S. Navy ships nearby. Nobody came to help them. They let them all burn alive. One cabin boy lived. Nobody answered their SOS. They said they couldn't hear it. Eh? Eh? Because SOS in Italian must be different. And you know it's a conspiracy because even now, in 2008, they find a decrypt where there's radio traffic messages about ships that don't even exist because they have aliases. A ship called the Teresa is calling another ship called Ship 1. Nobody even knows who or what they are. And then in 2007, a former Army paratrooper, Fabio Pizzali, gets new information investigating the death of a relative who worked for the U.S. Embassy in Rome. And he gets attacked and kidnapped, put in the trunk of a car. They set it on fire. But being a paratrooper, he kind of knows how to handle himself. He gets out and he lives. Tells me there's a lot going on that they're not telling us about. Even in one of the first articles, cruise liner's captain, he tried to steer the ship towards shallow waters to make evacuation by lifeboat easier. Well, we've kind of forgot that in the last few days. Now it's just pillory, 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 ang him, ang him, ang him. So you see they're trying to get away with something. We even had an incident like this in Canada. Brand new ferry, the Atlantic Vision. It's pulling into Government Wharf in Port aux Basques. And then all of a sudden, the vessel just changes course on its own. Almost crashes into the dock. But he was lucky. He wasn't finished off. I say this is an omen. We have an article written there about the omen. Mr. Haig, British cabinet minister, foreign minister, he says the same thing. He compared the sinking of the Italian ship to the European economic crisis. And he's bang on because it was an omen. It was a sacrifice. All the decks on this ship are named after the 13 European Union nations. They have little numbers underneath. Those are the cabin numbers. I didn't copy them in color to match them to the color on the charts. But when you get near the bottom ones here, you can just see you got number 12. That's like this year, right? So are these like days of the month, and the year? That one there, number 6. That's an important one in America. November 6, 2012. Look it up. They blew up the ship. They blew up explosives all over it because if there were bombs planted on the ship or something happened, well, now you can cover your tracks. All the forensic evidence will be destroyed because there'll be particulate matter from your explosives on the ship. How much time we got, Randy? We're heading near the exit. Couple of minutes? Too bad. So the Iran crisis, we got something fishy going on? Yes, we do. Because they're all saying it's about oil. They want to keep the price artificially high. So Israel and Iran are just poking a stick back and forward at each other just to keep people in a bit of a panic to keep the price up because they're heavily invested in the oil. That makes a lot of sense. It's one of the things we said on the previous show was why is Israel selling high-tech equipment to Iran? It's like the cops giving the biker gangs guns. Hey, why are they doing it? It can only mean one thing. They're playing on the same team. And of course, there's a report that came with this article, which I should do a little more to get posted on there, but I guess you can find it. Gordon Duff, Iran crisis, something fishy. Is the Iranians already have nuclear weapons? They got some from the former Soviet Union, specifically from the Ukraine. They bought one of the missiles that was left over there, a 550 kiloton weapon. And it's just like I was telling you about my buddy in the Navy when they ran into a little trouble and you just turn the turret around with the 3-inch 50. Everybody listens very closely to what you have to say. So if you got a 550-ton, megaton warhead, like one of them big nukes, everybody in the neighborhood's your friend until they can take it out of action and then they'll bomb you. So maybe that's why they're holding back, because Iran really does have something already. And they don't want to tell us how stupid we are because we let it happen in the first place. And then our reasonably good news site, Veterans Today had an article up about a possible false flag operation with a former American Ticonderoga class cruiser, specifically the USS Vincennes, being used to orchestrate a false flag attack. And I find that a little hard to believe because they scrapped it. So it's known to be gone, it's not in service. And there's no mistaking it. It has a very unique superstructure. You just can't mistake the Vincennes Ticonderoga class cruisers. So that to have a false flag attack, it's got to look good right through to the bitter end. Of course, there's 3 other Ticonderoga class cruisers that haven't been scrapped yet that are out of service. So you could easily use one of those. They take the numbers off. You can't tell one apart from the other in the dark or low light conditions, especially after you blow it up. So they may very well use one of these instead. So the USS Yorktown, the USS Ticonderoga, and the USS Thomas S. Gates, 2 of them are in Philadelphia, may very well be used for that. I can't discount it, but there are pictures of our fun ship, the Vincennes, going through the Panama Canal on its way to Brownsville, Texas, to be scrapped. And we have an article that kind of comes with it, The Looming War with Iran, talking about how Iran could possibly be goaded into committing the first act. But then when we read this, we find out the author is a former Israeli intelligence officer. He's on a talk show in Israel. He's written a lot of books, Voice Quality Engineering and Wireless Networks and 72 Virgins. Hope he didn't have to try them all out. But you kind of just start to wonder, shill, why does everybody got to be a spy? Can't nobody write a book that isn't a spy? I wish I had time to write a book, but I'm not a spy because nobody published it probably. Wrote my TV series thing. A lot of people that have read it say it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But you see, it's like Daddy always used to say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And you're in the spy organizations, you know a lot of people. But you're all part of the New World Order, no problem there. So basically what the big bomb is, what the real reason is they want to get Iran for, is the Iranian central bank. It's not part of the Rothschild movement of central banks all over the world. And then another little thing we have to follow up on too is we were mentioning the Thor Liberty and where it was going and what it's doing. So we started following it again. This is an older picture when it was just coming around the top. Got away from Kiel, Germany. It was rounding Spain. Kind of disappeared again today for some reason. Then I find out, some really cool stuff. It's being followed by a ship that's like the Vincennes going to the Deep Six, the Global Star, on its way to the scrap heap in India. Manned by 14 Russian sailors, and a ship that was held back in Britain for a little while until I guess it could catch up. So Global Star was supposed to go to the Alang scrapyard, I guess, in India. That's where they broke up the French aircraft carrier Clemenceau, but it was held back in Portland, the UK. And Portland, the UK is the major staging area for World War II. Naval base, air base. They're gone as of the 90s. They don't use them anymore, but you got the room. No problem to pull off a covert operation there. They said they didn't have money to buy fuel. If you didn't have money to buy, like I don't take my car to the garage if I don't have money to buy fuel. Why am I going to take a big ship and start to go to India if I don't have the money to buy fuel? It just doesn't make any sense. Sounds like one of those little things they do to make stuff up. So as it stands, the Global Star was still in the vicinity off the coast of Portugal with Thor Liberty. They look very much the same. A little paint. You could pass one off for the other very, very clearly. Of course, we're making noise about that kind of stuff, so it kind of like, shucks, we can't do that. The guy's watching us, man. He knows. So now a Russian fishing vessel is starting to tail them too. It was called Leader. And that goes like almost like Cold War stuff. That's what they used for spy ships, was the fishing vessels. But one of the most interesting things is we started to delve deeper in this. That this ship, British ship, It's registered in the Isle of Man. So it's not part of Britain because that's the Queen's own private islands. Those are things they got to keep since the Civil Wars and all that sort of thing. They're just protectorates, crown protectorates. And the Isle of Man, where Thor Liberty is registered, is a very interesting place. It has a space program. Can you believe it? It's like I've said many times when I did the Power Hour. Like sometimes you find out stuff that you just can't breathe the same way afterwards. We're not going to have time for the moon rocks, I don't think, but this is one of them. Google put up $30 million for the Lunar X Prize to have privately funded space program based on the island. It was voted the 5th most likely nation to reach the moon. Can you believe it? In January 2011, 2 research space stations owned by Excalibur Almaz arrived on the island and were kept in an aircraft hangar at the airfield formerly used by the RAF near Derby. And then some of the folklore behind this island is also mind-blowing too. Bougain, the malevolent spirit, blew the lid off St. Trinian's Church. It has a symbol for its country of 3 legs of man, a triskelion of 3 legs conjoined at the thigh.
Hey, you want to be a star?
Some people think that there's a militant attestation to this in Gaelic folklore to throw the sword of a fallen hero before a battle following their death. If the weapon landed upright, it was a blessing and a call to arms. If it did not stand upright, if it simply fell or landed without being erect, there would be no such call. Excuse me. And we were saying this from the beginning too, with some of these things going on in the Middle East and these weapons that are being moved, that they fudged. Their weapons didn't land upright. They fell down. The prince had his heart problem. He had to be hauled off to the hospital. All the codes were in place. Everybody's willing to move. Everything's moving, but the sword fell flat. It didn't stand up. And we get to live and see another day. Then, of course, I guess we can just talk about the moon rocks quickly. We have them posted on the website. I was looking for something else, completely different. I've said things, about the space program being fixed. It's a fraud, a lie, a fabrication. And there we go. Some Chinese scientists in Taiwan examine the images on the moon rocks and find fossil records of living things inside. That is the story of the entire news history of the human race. But it's never been on the news. That should have just stopped us all in our tracks. There's life on another planet. They found like squash neurons, capillary blood vessels. They're all shown in the images. You can look at them, see the descriptions, link to the original NASA photographs of the rocks. And as I said on the show before, when we were talking about the types of these rocks, they're very rare rocks that are found in Australia. And the third got to be news because they found the third type of rock in Australia that they said was a moon rock. And right from the very beginning I said, it's a fake, it's a fraud. They're pawning off rare rocks from the planet Earth saying they're moon rocks because they faked the moonshot and stole all the money. That makes sense. That's why everything's such a big secret at NASA and everywhere else. It was an intelligence operation and bloodletting to take the money from us poor, common peasants for their own devices. Because there's only 2 possibilities you can have. If there's a fossil record in the moon rocks, either there was life on another planet, the moon, or these are Earth rocks. And you got caught. Busted! Either way, it's a major story. You can't breathe the same after you find out. They faked the moonshot. They lied to us. They lied to us about everything. Can we show the third video in there? Because it kind of goes with this. This lady is talking about, she got to talk to Wernher von Braun, the NASA rocket scientist. and she has some very important things to say about how it's all aligned.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a sixth grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them
about 3 and something.
or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant, and I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system, and he told me back then that they didn't. He said, go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy. I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat. And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments, who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Wernher von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. and we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Werner von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet, and we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth, and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are...
So as they used to say in Get Smart, Stalker, you stupid! This is chaos! We must have chaos! We can't have peace. What are you, John Lennon? They don't allow it. So even way back then when Werner von Braun was alive, imagine what the world could have been like. So one of the big things they like to beat up on John Lennon for is they always say, you know, like he was kind of like not religious or anything like that. But when Christ left, he left us with a final commandment, to love one another. Love, which was something John Lennon took to heart. Took out that big advertising campaign. War is over. If we let it, if we want it. And if we change the channel, we can make that come true. War is over. If we want it. We can have peace and we can have love. We just stop the manipulation of our minds with mainstream media. They just do things for short-term gain, their gain, for long-term pain, our pain. So we change the channel, one at a time. As Randy told me too, link this show all over the place. Advertise it. Print off a copy of something, hang it up at the laundromat. Drop it off door to door with your neighbors. Get it around. It's the only chance we got. Because if we can't talk it out, then you're going to have to fight it out. Because this enveloping fascist police state monster is just going to eat you and consume you. We think there's an easier way. Like I've always said, it's the easiest war you could ever win. Change the channel. You change the channel to that channel. You come here and watch Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're broadcasting from Toronto. Anything you can do to help out makes us go a lot farther and allows everybody to talk it out. So we got a little extra tonight, thanks to Randy. Bless you. Good luck. We'll be back again. Same that channel, same that time next week.
I'll break the bricks. I'll pick the locks. I don't got nothing, but I'll give what I got. I'll never turn. I'll never bend. I'm with you now. Whose outcomes all fixed from the start. 9 judges sitting counting their money in the dark. 8 towers of iron surround the desert town. On a cold December morning, 7 martyrs knocked them down.
Hey, you want to be a star? Produce your own show at thatchannel.com. It's fun, it's easy. Contact us, thatchannel.com, where you are future TV. Hey, you want to be a star? Produce your own show at thatchannel.com. It's fun, it's easy. Contact us, thatchannel.com, where you are future TV.